So I'm going to pose this question to you, and it's a pretty heavy question.
So this cease and desist, that's what I feel about that. Let's keep fighting the good fight and bringing more people on our side. Today, we're diving into a case that has quickly become one of the most talked about legal battles in the country, the Mirabelli case. What started as a dispute involving educators, parental rights, and school policies has now reached the highest court in the nation. The questions at the center of this case are complex, emotional, and deeply personal for many families. Who should be informed about major decisions affecting a child at school? What rights do parents have? What responsibilities do educators have? And where should those lines be drawn? As with many issues that dominate today's headlines, there's no shortage of opinions. Supporters view this case as a critical fight for parental transparency and involvement. Critics argue that schools must also consider the safety, privacy, and well-being of students navigating difficult circumstances. Our goal today isn't to tell you what to think. Instead, we're going to examine the facts, explore the legal arguments, discuss the broader implications, and ask some of the questions that often get lost in the noise. Because regardless of where you stand politically, socially, or philosophically, the outcome of this case could have far-reaching effects on families, schools, and communities across the nation. As always, Around Town is committed to having open conversations, hearing different perspectives, and tackling controversial topics with respect and honesty. So grab a seat, keep an open mind, and join us as we break down the Mirabelli case, what brought it to the Supreme Court, and why so many people are paying close attention to what happens next. This is Around Town with Matt Ward and Sonja Shaw.
So, all right, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. So I'll preface this conversation by saying that prior to me being on the school board up until a year and a half ago, I had never even heard the names Mirabelli or West. Like, no idea. You could have said those names and mean absolutely nothing to me. But since being on the school board for a year and a half, anywhere I go, whether it's a conference, whether it's even like typically even school board meetings, other people that are related in the school atmosphere, the names Mirabelli and West have like come up so many times. Mirabelli West, Mahmoud, Mirabelli West. And I'm like, man, I gotta hear this story. So I've heard multiple people talk about the story. Just recently, Paul Jonah was speaking about it at a conference up in Sacramento. And I thought, you know what? We're just starting this podcast. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to see if we can get these ladies on. I really want to hear the story. I really want to talk with them. So that's kind of where it came to for me. So to me, to have you guys on is like kind of a celebrity moment because you guys are probably the biggest names in school board in that I'm ever familiar with. I'm told this is the case of the century as far as, parental rights are concerned. So this is huge. This is an honor for me. I'll say that. And so just a little bit of introduction here, and I'll just give a little bit of intro because I don't want to tell the whole story. I want you guys to tell me the story. In fact, I don't know the whole story, so I want you guys to tell it. So from what I've read off of the Thomas More Society website, Elizabeth Mirabelli and Lorianne West, two award-winning teachers in Escondido that were being forced to hide students' gender transitions at school and actively deceive. If I recall correctly from a recent conference, I believe Paul Jonas said that Mirabelli was given 7 kids to transition at school, is what I wrote down here in my notes. That's what I remember. And I'm sure by the fact that we were talking about this, everyone knows that you guys obviously didn't just take that lightly and go along with it. So that's ultimately kind of where it started, to my understanding. And then there's more information on the Thomas More Society. So anyone that wants to go on that website and read your guys' story, there's a lot there. And then I also want to give a nod here to Paul Jonah. He was your legal counsel with Thomas More Society. He couldn't be on the call, unfortunately, but I just want to give a nod to him that he was the lawyer, the big fighter that helped get this case to the Supreme Court and get a decision. And one of the things I read on his website of his bio is that he has 9 consecutive wins against the state of California. So that's pretty impressive. And I just want to recognize him for that. And then again, intro for Sonja Shaw, obviously no introduction needed. She's the president of Chino Valley Unified School District, running to be state superintendent of public instruction in California. And she's huge in the space of parental rights, parental transparency. And I think it is Sonja's stance against secret gender policies that really made Sonja's name famous. So, like what you guys were fighting, what you guys were standing on, to me, that's what I believe put Sonja's name really on the map. It was her saying, like, no, we're not going to do this here at Chino, and then them passing their school board resolution, which ended up then getting a whole bunch of heat from the state, which then resulted in AB 1955 and all these other things. And so I think that really kind of ties it all together of like, Sonja, Lori, Elizabeth Mirabelli, and all kind of the same kind of issue that you're all fighting and involved in. So with that being said, I always like to acknowledge the purpose. And so for me, like the purpose of this meeting, I always say is knowledge is power and like learn from other people's experiences. And I believe that your story, it will empower people, it encourages people, and it equips people. And so that's why I want to have the story. I want other people, I want other teachers especially to hear your story so you can empower them. And so that way and be like, well, Elizabeth Mirabelli did it, Lori West did it. You know what? That gives me strength. And so that's kind of the reason I want to have this conversation. Okay, so with that being said, jumping into it. So if we can just have Elizabeth Mirabelli and Lori West, if you could just start off by telling us, like, what is it that made you guys household names in the world of school board politics now? Like, where did this all start? Why are your names famous? What's going on?
I love it. Before they start, they're so humble, but you don't even understand how grateful we as parents are for both of you. I always say between you two and Jessica Tapia, you guys are literally the hero teachers that taking the boldest and bravest stance and hopefully prayfully, it's contagious and more take it. So I just wanted to input that. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart, including all the other parents for doing what you've done.
Oh, it's, that's why we did what we did. We did it for you and with you because Lori and I understand as veteran educators, that our role is to empower parents. Our role is to stand alongside you, and that parents are the primary educators of their own children, not me, not Lori. We are merely servants to our parents. We are people who create excellence in our craft, so that parents can be achieve their goals and dreams for their own children. Mm-hmm. It's not about some kind of an agenda that they send us to the America's public schools that parents pay for. And we knew it was completely unethical, completely against every professional standard of ethics for a professional educator. It was just so wrong. And unfortunately, many of our colleagues knew it was wrong, but they put their own interests first. And Lori and I, like Sonja, she's a very strong woman, and Lori and I are both, strong women, and we were just not having it. Lori?
This began in the spring of 22 when they put out these new directives. And I remember looking around the staff meeting thinking, what? We have to go on the word of whatever a child says and hide things from parents. And we knew that it was wrong then. So we waited until the beginning of the next school year and tried to get a religious exemption, and EUSD denied it. So our only next step was to file a lawsuit, which we filed in the fall of 22. And here we are in 26, still going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And so can you kind of go into detail, like what exactly were you being asked to do? How many kids was it? And can you go into some detail along those lines?
I can hit on that because, but Lori will speak to what she was witnessing in the physical education department, which was equally, if not worse, egregious in the classroom setting. So I was a regular classroom teacher. Um, we went to a staff meeting. We were told that this was the new normal, that we would be following these directives. The next morning, I got emails from the school social worker and the school counselor with a list of all the students who were going to be changing their names, their identities, their pronouns, and that we were to follow unquestioningly changing all this. This this communication from the counselor social worker also contained a statement that said parents are not aware. You are not, when you call home, you are to use their legal given names. When they were at school, you're going to use their preferred identities and names. So Lori and I followed up and clarified, just to make sure we had it on the record, and they replied, parents will not be notified. I have the smoking gun email. Parents will not be notified from a high level administrator at the district. And right then we knew that we were in trouble. I was really concerned because I knew I couldn't do it. I'm like, no.
And how many kids are we talking about here? Was seven the correct number?
Well, the total for the school was about 20 to 25 kids. There was a lot of
Wow.
kids. Now, Lori was watching something going on in the PE area, the physical education area. Um, Lori?
Well, being a PE teacher, I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. Let me close that. Being a PE teacher, I knew this was wrong, and I thought someday they're going to try to put boys in the girls' locker room. Luckily, that did not happen, but there was two sixth grade girls that were dressing in the boys' locker room. And they had dressed pretty much the whole year of the 22-23 school year until our lawsuit came out. And then they stopped. I think they didn't want their parents to find out. And as it turns out, one of the girls became the most feminine, cutest girl in 7th and 8th grade. It was a phase. It was a phase. She wanted to go by a boy's name. She was in my after school weightlifting class, and she told me her preferred name, and I just chose not to use it and just try to talk to her without using names or pronouns because I felt it was lying to the student. So after the lawsuit was filed, these girls stopped, and that just shows it's a phase. And these kids got so much attention at school for coming out, or whatever they wanted to call it. They were like, oh, you're so brave. And they got treats. And it was like they got all this attention. Then the other kids saw it and they followed along. So I think Elizabeth had at one time 7 girls in one class of 30 kids, 7 out of 30 who wanted to use a different pronoun and name.
Right.
And
right.
that
And
for sure. Social contagion.
Did you just say social contagion?
So
Did someone just say
something like
social
that.
contagion?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a social contagion. It caught
Absolutely.
on. It caught on.
Yeah.
And that's what
Absolutely.
it was. It was a fad. It was a phase. It was
And
not
that
real.
phase, thanks, honey. That phase that Lori's referring to, we all know that adults as mentors and examples have a massive influence on the young people. And it was the adults that created that environment, that created that opening for them to step into this whole new exploratory uh, experience of playing around with gender. Here's a really dark and scary fact for you and all of the teachers and school board members. When those two sixth grade girls were moved from the girls' locker room into the boys' changing room, sixth grade, these girls were what, about 11 years of age? The school principal where I worked told the male PE teacher to, quote, keep an eye on the girls.
Yeah.
So the adults that are running the school are being told that men are going to keep an eye on the girls while they change. Something's very wrong.
Yeah.
And as Lori pointed out, once the lawsuit hit, the administrators were so afraid. Both girls were switched back to the girls' locker room. Both became normal, both became comfortable with their natural biological identity. And same with the 7 girls in my class. By the end of the year, they were all wearing lipstick and skirts. I mean, it was the adults, the counselors, the social workers, the teachers, the administrators who created this chaotic, fluid, very harmful, suggestive ideas to these young kids. And that is truly scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah. One
it,
of the along the lines of what you're saying, I want to say one of the things that I've read recently, and it was something like no kid ever thinks they're born into the wrong body until some creepy adult puts that idea in their head. And I 100% believe that because I've been watching these videos of some they're like a 1 year old, 2 year old. Oh, my 1 year old is trans. My 2 year old is trans. Like, no, you do not have a 2 year old trans child. You have a problem with yourself. There's something going on at home. You're putting these ideas into this kid's head. This is not natural.
Mm-hmm. No, I
yeah,
agree. And this isn't isolated either to your guys' school district. You just so happen to have two brave teachers as yourself that stood up and said no to expose this, and people still don't know. They still do not know to this day. They don't even know that it's the law. I would even argue that more than 50% of parents across California don't know it's the law that allows kids to cross into each other's locker rooms and restrooms. They just don't know. And that's why these conversations are so important. I mean, you guys know as soon as I became a board member, I saw an assembly member bring a bill saying that parents have the right to know if their kid identifies as the opposite sex. I really hate the word gender. And as you guys were speaking, I'm not going to even lie, I was beginning to be nauseous and I had a lot of rage boiling in my heart right now just to hear, the stories that are coming out. It's just, it's mind blowing that we're even in this situation. How does a society turn their face? I am so glad that history will remember you two as being courageous and heroes, and not the ones that turn their face in when we see kids being, put in danger. Literally, they're putting them in danger. I mean, Matthew and I spoke to someone who at 15 had her, I think it was maybe even younger,
13,
15, yeah,
13,
13,
13.
had her healthy breasts cut off by adults, by doctors, and their parents are being manipulated. We hear it. We hear these legislators, we hear these people say, well, they're going to go kill themselves. Wait, whoa, 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 what? They're mentally, struggling, and you're saying that they're suicidal, and you're putting them down a pathway further to, eventually harm themselves more than likely. Like, I don't know. I when I saw that bill, there was no way in the world we were going to stay silent. And you saw what the state did. They sued us. And we that's when I learned about your guys' case because we were learning about all these things going on. And eventually that led us to being linked together. I really do believe God brings full
right.
circle.
Amen. And so when we met you, Sonia, and you reached out, it was, we were on the cliff. We had no idea of the victory that was right around the corner.
Hmm.
We were all biting our nails, wondering what is Benitez going to do?
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing journey, but we have had victory at every stage of this case. It began with a landmark preliminary injunction, the first of its kind in the nation, when
Hmm.
Benitez said, halt to the whole thing. That was early in the case. That
Yeah.
was a miracle.
Yeah.
And then all of the motions back and forth, our attorneys shot down 10 motions to dismiss. We had countless depositions. I watched hours and hours of depositions. And Judge Benitez commented recently, in fact, you were there with us in our most recent hearing. He said, I have learned more about transgender ideology than I could have ever imagined.
Yes.
It was his last case before he left the bench. He was
Yeah.
on the bench for 27 years. He postponed his retirement for an entire year just for this case
Wow.
Thank God
because
for
he
that.
knew, he knew. And then, the stall tactics and the dishonesty on behalf of state lawyers from Sacramento,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
just they as you watch the state attorneys from Sacramento do their work in comparison to the Thomas More Society,
Yes.
it, it, the caliber is just so low compared to our, we just
Yeah.
it's been blessed from the beginning.
No, you're
We
right.
have the
I mean,
best lawyers in the country.
yep.
Now we have a coalition of people like yourself and Aaron Friday and many others who we just came together as a community. We stood up against these.
Yeah. You're
What's the
being nice.
word? What's the word for these people? I don't know.
Insane, crazy.
I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yes.
the only word I can ever describe any of this is diabolical. It's so evil. It's pure evil. Like you're talking about that day that we were in court. What a blessing it was to be there with you guys, watching history be made literally in California. I will never forget that day. That day, history books will be written about that day because of you two and Thomas More Society and Judge Benitez. Can you imagine? It was incredible. And then you're talking about the attorneys. Our taxpayer dollars pay for these deputy attorney generals from the state. It was so embarrassing. They couldn't even argue that at one point. Remember, one of them said, oh, I'm low on the paying totem pole. And we were like, oh my God, he's literally admitting out loud that they can't even argue this. Like they're just sitting there because they have to be there. It
Good
was
point.
an incredible moment. I wish to God it was recorded because can you imagine those sound bites?
We do have a written transcript of all the hearings. I have copies of those, and there's already a book in the work where we're sketching books. There's going to be a book from
Amazing.
a legal perspective,
Let's get a
and
movie of that
I'm going
day.
to write a memoir. I've already had people contact me that want to make a movie out of it.
Oh, wow.
You should, because I even remember when we kind of jacked their elevator ride. We went in first, and I was like, "If you want to be on the right side of history, come in." And honestly, one of them, I give him credit. He jumped in front and he like pretended to get in, and I was like, "Come on, they know they want to join this side of being on the right side."
I
There is
loved it when you did that. That
well, because
was
there
so
is some that
awesome.
right? Like you could just see it, like they're they cannot believe what they're doing, like come on, like at some point we need more, Maribelli and West. We need more all throughout California. And the more we tell your guys' story, I've been blessed to go all around California 15 months and counting. You guys come up and people cheer. It is
Yeah.
so cool.
Hmm.
No, and I'm not joking. Like Matt and I always have a joke about, when are we going to cry in the podcast? As soon as you started talking, my eyes were teering up. I'm like, not yet,
Oh,
not yet.
wow.
Um, But you two are you're just incredible. Thank you for what you've done. I didn't mean to interrupt the conversation. We just like these conversations because they're just natural conversations. But at the same token, I can't even tell you how grateful people are for you. I was in Palos Verdes, what, 2 days ago. I lose count of days. And I said your guys' name, the two brave teachers, and then the crowd erupts. And it's like, it is so cool to be able to have this story here in California. And it's so
It
cool
is.
to see
Mhm.
teachers. Again, I'll go back to saying you and Lori and Jessica. That's all we have in California that really took a stance. But how cool is it that California teachers, regardless of the bullies in the union, you guys did the right thing. And it's not going to be forgotten, and it's not for vain. That's for darn sure. Look at the Supreme Court ruling.
Isn't
It's
that
beautiful.
amazing?
It's
That
incredible.
was a miracle.
Yes.
And, there were 40 cases percolating in various states on this issue, but they were all brought by parents and families. And one of the reasons why Mirabelli v. Bonta has achieved victory, many reasons, but it was standing together, teachers with parents. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
What could they say? What could they say? Both sides of the coin were standing up.
Yeah, you told the
So,
story that most people won't tell, right? You
so
uncovered
Lori, oh, sorry.
something. Go ahead, sorry,
Lori,
Matt.
Lori, can you kind of give us a summary of what the Supreme Court ruling was? What does that mean? And like where are things at now? Say like for instance, your school district after that Supreme Court ruling. Are the same policies in place? Have they switched direction? What's going on?
Well, the Supreme Court doesn't usually even look at cases like this, let alone write an opinion. So this was really a rare, unusual. I think they saw the writing on the wall. There's so many cases about this across the country. This issue needs to be resolved once and for all.
Mhm.
They had a 6-3 decision, and even one of the dissenters seemed to kind of go along with us. And of course, the dissenters were 3 women on the court, and you can figure out who that was. Since then, the crazy thing is, state of California is continuing their lawsuit. They are still appealing again at the Ninth Circuit. They've been told by the Supreme Court that they are wrong. This is unconstitutional, and they continue. We were awarded a $4.5 million in attorney's fees, but that doesn't even count the state of California's cost for attorneys. Each time we've been at court, they've had 4 to 7 attorneys and then people in the back taking notes that are being paid. So I bet the state of California has probably spent $5 million of their own money. Well, no, of our money on this, as well as having to pay for our attorneys, and they continue. And it's just insane. Like, they are kids that are dug into their position and they do not want to give it up, no matter how many times they're told they're wrong. They were first told they were wrong in September of 23, and they continued and they continued. As far as the school district, both Elizabeth and I have retired. So I am not sure what their position is. I would think they would go with common sense and right, but it's a school district. I'm unsure of where they're at right now.
Yeah, the federal ruling, the intervention provided by the Supreme Court prevented the Ninth Circuit from halting Judge Benitez's federal ruling. So Judge Benitez's federal ruling stands. Every single school in the state of California must notify parents and must put a written clause in the PRISM training notifying educators that they are not obligated to withhold information. They are free to speak. They are free to notify parents. So the Judge Benitez's ruling stands, and it is the force of law right now.
Okay.
The appeal by Bonta to the Ninth Circuit will not affect that. We are completely in
the Supreme.
Right now. So the cool thing about the Supreme Court, as Lori said, highly unusual for the Supreme Court to
Mm.
intervene. We had 12 amicus briefs from states all across the country. There were at least 10 states that weighed in on this issue, including Florida Attorney General and other attorney generals across the country who wrote letters on our behalf to explain to the SCOTUS why they had to act. Um, we even had an amazing amicus brief written by Dr. Simone Gold, president of America Frontline Doctors. And it was an amazing letter explaining the gruesome medical details involved from the beginning to end of gender transitions. So it's really exposed the dark side. But the Supreme Court ruling puts everybody on notice that this is what will be the final outcome. But you know what? There's a possibility that Lori and I will be going to DC.
Yes. And I pray to God it's you too, because you guys have a solid, solid case. And Judge Benitez alongside Thomas More with everything that you guys have done. It was so beautiful the way I seen him just make sure there was no loophole. There was nothing untouched. Like, what a brilliant man to sit there and watch him, but also brilliant on your guys' part to provide everything. And then, Paul, man, that's Paul Jonas. I actually was just this is incredible. I got to share it with you guys. This is breaking, okay? Remember Prism? Prism is the
Right.
mandatory training in which, our district kind of helped blow the whistle and show the documents that are telling teachers with the required training by law in AB 1955 and what was it, AB 5, to train teachers how to keep the secrets. And they said, no, 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 we're not. And we're like, yes, they are.
Mhm.
And so we gave, your guys' attorney the document showing and the slides. Well, I logged into Prism after, a couple months. You guys haven't been to court for a few months. Well, at least the San Diego part. I logged into Prism this morning. I'm going to read you when you log into Prism what it says. This is because of you guys. It says parents and guardians have a federal constitutional right to be informed in their public school student child's expresses gender incongruence.
Good job.
Teachers and school staff have a federal constitutional right to accurately inform the parents or guardians of the student when the student expresses gender incongruence. Why are they still saying out loud and fighting when on their own Prism site, their own training site, here it is. I gave this to Paul just right now, like literally when we're on the phone, because I am like blown away how they keep gaslighting the public out
Mhm.
loud, but it's right here. They just put it in their own system, their own training. And this was because of what you guys did in court and took it that far to get to the Supreme Court that they had to pretty much eat the dirt that they were lying about, put it out loud. I mean, this wasn't here.
Totally.
This is beautiful. So again, I don't know. I just get excited to know that
Hmm.
because of what you guys have done, look at what's happening. It's just a matter of us to keep going and not put our hands off the steering wheel, right? Because we know where they're going to steer it back. Uh,
Exactly.
so just know we're on that boat with you. We're taking it long haul. We're gonna have these big huge wins, and it's because you guys said no, we're not going to do this. So thank you.
Mhm.
This is huge.
This is
All
huge.
right, so I'm just going to read a couple of things here. So a key quote from the U.S. Supreme Court opinion, and this was to me is like really big. It says, "So these policies cut out the primary protectors of children's best interests, their parents." And I thought like that kind of pretty well summarizes the whole thing for in terms of the opinion for me. And then also something stated on the Thomas More Society, the court rejected California's premise that the state knows better than parents, affirming that it is parents, not bureaucrats, who are the primary protectors of their children. And so, like, as I read those, like, one of the things I constantly think about is like how many people would take like what you guys are doing or whatnot and be like, oh, this is this is anti-trans or this is anti-LGBTQIA plus, and then I said they like make these statements as like a smokescreen to the plain and simple reality that parents have a right to know what is going on with their children. And like to me, I think to myself like, okay, what parent out there actually thinks that they don't have the right to that information if their kids going to school and expressing this, say, gender sex incongruence? Like, what parent can really look me in the eye and say, you know what, I don't have a right to that information, or I wouldn't want to know either one of those? Like, I don't know any parent that would say that or actually feels that way. In fact, literally just 3 days ago, I was at school. The assistant principal walked up to me and said, "Hey, Matt, I wanted to let you know your son Harlan, he got hit in the head with a soccer ball today. But we checked him out, we looked at everything, and he seems to be fine. Like he's going to be fine. Everything's good." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. All right." But like you got kids that are transitioning at school, changing their name, changing their pronouns, all these different things. When you're told, don't say anything, keep it to yourself. Like, so thank you. I love what you guys are standing for. I love your principles and just want to throw that out there.
Great, great. Well, it kind of plays on what Sonja shared earlier, that there's something really dark about it, because it's, who wants to be deceived? Who wants to be cut out? Who wants to be manipulated? And as a teacher, as an educator, working with youth for many years, Lori and I, we we carry the responsibility of setting an example of the right kind of character traits that kids should be developing. And I knew that to manipulate a child like that was to really harm that child, even just to say, well, you don't have to tell mom and dad, but you can tell me. I mean, that's just
Right.
really teaching that kid to betray their closest relationships. That's crazy.
All right, so that kind of feeds into my next question. So I always do what's called a devil's advocate question, where I throw out another alternative side to what maybe you feel or think. So I'm gonna throw this one out to Lori. So this one's for you because you haven't said so much. And so here's the question for you. So critics would say this was never really about parental rights. They'd say it was about refusing to affirm or respect transgender students. They argue that when teachers decline to use a student's preferred name or pronouns or insist on informing parents even when a student is afraid, that can make vulnerable kids feel unsafe, rejected, or even contribute to mental health struggles. So, how do you respond to people who believe your position prioritizes your personal beliefs over the emotional well being and dignity of transgender students? No pressure.
That's the argument that they make. The funny thing is, what about you're putting these kids through living a double life? Like they have to be one alone cannot be good for children. Another crazy thing with this, everyone at the school knows. Our school know that little Susie wants to be Johnny, but the parent right out front is the one that doesn't know. They are the greatest keepers and educators of their children. They care the most. In fact, what this is presuming guilt on part of parents before they've been found guilty. They're presuming that the parents are going to react badly. Well, schools give bad news all the time to parents.
Right.
Your student stole, your student cheated, your student hit another kid. We give bad news that parents will become upset with often. But because we tell the parents, everything that happens at schools. This is a partnership. We do not want to replace parents. So it's just that mindset. In fact, many teachers at our school told kids they just hate trans kids. And these teachers didn't really even understand what our lawsuit was about. It was about our religious rights, our freedom of speech rights. It was about us. It wasn't about harming any children in any way. In fact, it was helping children and helping parents. So that is their playbook, saying how these kids are going to be harmed or they're going to be more suicidal. But studies have shown after these transitions, the suicide rate goes way up because changing something about you doesn't fix the mental problem. They don't go into looking into what are the other comorbidities that student has or issues. Did someone die in their family? Does someone have cancer? There's other things that make kids upset, and they're not doing any psychological analysis of that before they go, okay, you're a boy. Okay, you can come to school and be Johnny now. And it's just unbelievable. If you had told people about this 15 years ago, they would have said, no, that's crazy. That would never happen. But look where we are.
Right. It's funny what you said there because I literally just had that conversation with a few days ago. At school, if a kid gets bad grades, is the school going to say, you know what? All right, we're going to withhold that information from the parents because the parents are not going to be happy to know that Susie got an F in science. So we're just going to say she got an A because we don't want that bad news to come home, or Susie got in a fight, or but no, the schools let you know your kid took Tylenol today, your kid needed a band-aid, your kid got hit by a soccer ball. Like your kids, the school lets you know those things as they should. You don't keep that information, and I that seems totally logical. I agree with you 100%.
Right. And it's always that double standard for the LGBT community. It's always that we're special. The rules don't apply to us. We do what we want. We call the shots. We set the norms. No, the standards are going to be neutral and fair and respectful. But it's about the adults. The adults need to be in charge, not kids telling us what to do.
All right, so one of the other questions I have here, and I think one of you
You
alluded to
know, one
this
of the
earlier. Go ahead.
on the first day that we came back to school after we filed the lawsuit, we filed it on a Thursday. We called in sick on Friday on our attorney's advice. We showed up Monday. Monday, I had lunchtime. I had went out to my car and I walked organic thing. They all started clapping and they were so like, yay, W for West. And after that, the kids were like going, W for West, like every time they saw me, because our school was like 82% Hispanic. So you can pretty much assume that majority of our students are Catholic or Christian, and we're representing their values. And I think the kids saw it. And the school became so upset with me saying I caused this thing to happen and it disrupted the school. I mean, they had these videos in court of the kids all clapping for me. And I was just like, yeah, kids.
Yeah.
And I didn't start it. It was so organic. But I think we represent what most people feel, even the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. And so one of my questions here is what do you feel or how do you feel when you hear another teacher or like another principal say, "Oh, I would say something or I would do something, but I'm a teacher. Oh, I would say something. I like what you're doing, but I would say something, but oh, I have a job here." Like, what are your thoughts when you hear stuff like that? And I'm sure you've probably heard other teachers say that.
Well, that's what happened with Lori and I. We spoke to quite a few of our colleagues, but Lori and I, we decided to step forward. We talked to a lot of our colleagues, and they all had the same opinion that we did, but they were just, they didn't really care enough about the consequences for others, or they were just protecting, their own jobs. And
Yeah.
what's my thought about that? I think it's understandable. I think I can relate to where they're coming from, but in this case, I think we have a duty as professional educators to do the ethical thing. And I also think that there was very, very serious harms that could happen.
Mhm.
And Lori and I were not going to allow that to happen to our students. When we saw what was going on in the locker room and they were moving young girls into the boys' changing area and boys were watching them change, all bets are off. I'm sorry. I mean, I need to protect these girls more than I need to worry about their self-perception, and they might feel upset if they believe they're trans. Well, there's a lot of danger just being in the boys' changing room.
Mhm. Lori, do you want to weigh in on that? The question of how do you feel when you hear other teachers say, "Oh, I agree with you, but I'm a teacher."
Well, Elizabeth was the one that started this and contacted the Thomas More Society. She invited myself and maybe 4 or 5 other teachers in and told us the story and asked us to join. And they all believe what we believe. They're Christians, they're Catholics, they know right from wrong, but they were afraid to join. They were fearing for their jobs. I think it made it a little easier for Elizabeth and I because we were at the end of our careers, where at any point we could have retired in 22. I didn't want to retire because I love my job, but those teachers maybe had something right, because we faced serious backlash from our coworkers when we went back to work. Terrible things happened to us. And the crazy thing is the school did not do one thing to stop it. And I 100% feel if I was the gay teacher that everyone was mistreating, they would have been on it. But they took no steps at all.
Right.
The first day back at work, Elizabeth's room was plastered with posters made by children that said, "We hate trans kids." And for this to be hung in her classroom, a teacher had to have helped them and let them in the room. Rooms are locked. They didn't just get in there. So some teacher helped them make these posters and plaster them all around Elizabeth's room. And we tried to find out who it was, and there's cameras outside this in the hallways, and they said they couldn't figure out who it was. I don't think they even tried to find out who it was. But if the shoe had been reversed on the other foot, they would have found out who did it. If it was we were gay and it was anti-gay posters up in our room. So they took the stand against us. They treated us horribly, and we went through horrible treatment from our administration and our coworkers and some students, a few students. In fact, I had a student that I had all of 7th grade and all of 8th grade. And in May, all of a sudden, she needed to be out of my class, saying that I misgendered her. This kid was in my class 7th and 8th grade, and she had an unusual name. So I don't know if that was a made-up name, but that was always on the school rosters. And I always called this person that name. And then all of a sudden that I had mislabeled her and she needed to be out of my class. I go, wow, you've been in my class for all of 7th grade and all of 8th grade to May, and now all of a sudden you have a problem? It's because I filed the lawsuit. And there was a couple situations like that because of the filing of the lawsuit. But these kids loved me before. In fact, I had the greatest idea just before we went and filed the lawsuit. We knew we were going to file it. I did. And I told Elizabeth, and she did the same thing. And I said, what is Miss West doing right? What is your favorite thing in the class? What can she improve on? And 99.9% of them were positive, saying that I had done a great job and they loved my class. One of the girls on the last day of school, because they put me out of work, so I wasn't there for the 8th grade graduation, which broke my heart. They put me out about the middle of May, and it was about 3 weeks of school left. And I kept asking, can I just please come to the graduation? I'm giving awards. I want to say goodbye to these kids, and they would not let me. And that just broke my heart. I don't know what the harm would be for me being there at the graduation. But one of these girls wrote another teacher, Mrs. Hudson, my bestest friend at work. I love her so much. She had the kids write on the last days of school were little messages to Mrs. West because you didn't get to say goodbye to her. And one message was terrible. And it was from a girl, and her name was on it. And I looked back at what she wrote 6 weeks ago about me, saying that I was awesome and she loved me. And in 6 weeks, her opinion about me had changed so much that she wrote this nasty thing to me. And where did she get that? From the other teachers.
Yeah.
Other teachers said terrible things about us. In fact, one teacher students told us one teacher told the story in front of the class and started crying about us filing the lawsuit. And other teachers told them it's just a money grab. So kids kept going, oh, it's just a money grab. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So the teachers misinformed the kids and turned kids against us, kids who had loved me for the entire school year. And that alone is like, that's diabolical. Why would you do that? Why would other staff members do that to me? The school did nothing about it.
Yeah, of course not. But that's because you were exposing the truth and it would make them look bad. I mean, this is what they do over and over. And this is why it's so important to have teachers like yourselves. I mean, you know, you guys didn't have to do this, even close to retirement. Close to retirement, most teachers are thinking, you know, they're going to miss their class. Number one, a good teacher would think that because my mother-in-law was a teacher and it was hard for her to finally retire. But number two, you're thinking about like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to sub? Am I going to do this? You're not even thinking about having to go to court and sitting there and telling a story and fighting evil straight on. So regardless what anybody says, just know, you know, there's so many of us that appreciate you. There's also so many that will eventually watch this and watch your story and see the Supreme Court ruling and read about you too in the history books that are going to appreciate it. And those kids that were manipulated by these adults, we just have to pray that they see the truth. And I really do think because they do know the truth, one day it's going to come back and hit them and they're going to thank you in some speech someday or some testimony someday and say, you know what? My teacher, Lori West, my teacher, Mrs. Mirabelli, you know, I should say Mrs. because that's what they're going to say. They were brave and they told us the truth and they fought for us when they finally wake up and see how adults have lied. So in the meantime, we just have to pray that they keep, you know, having protection too. And the protection is just adults waking up and stopping it. I mean, I'm pretty sure your school district is thinking twice before doing something so aggressive out there like they were. And we see it over and over. Some of them are aggressive, but then again, they're getting checked every bit of the way, right? We just have to
Yeah.
keep checking them.
Yes.
All right, so I'll
Thank
do
God
one
for-
last. Oh,
Thank
sorry, go
God
ahead.
for people like yourselves who step up and get on our boards.
Yeah, we need more. And we have more coming, trust me. 2026 November, I have been in rooms all across California. One of the major goals was to make sure people in their own communities realize how important these school board seats are and run for them. And I have people committed all across California that say they're going to run in this next election in November. So that is a huge blessing because that never happens. Parents generally are PTO, you know, room moms with you guys or dads and PT, you know, whatever is needed in the classroom, moms and dads. But we have parents running for school board this year at a larger number than we ever have. So get ready. We have more help coming.
Yay.
All right, so I'm going to do one last question here, then we'll do a conclusion, then I'll give you any last final words or how people can reach out to you. So, last question here. What is your advice to teachers that find themselves in the same situation that you were in, where they find themselves trapped between the morals and convictions and state or district mandates that might cost them their careers? What is your advice to other teachers just like yourselves? What would you say to them?
Well, I would always encourage a person. One thing I've learned in this journey is that you don't really have anything if you don't have your principles and you don't have your standards that you live by. If you sell out on that, what good is a job? So always honor yourself, honor your values and principles, and let the chips fall where they may.
Wise words.
Lori, any
You know,
thoughts on that?
we when we originally tried to get other teachers to join the lawsuit, they were afraid, and rightly so. But now we have two other teachers that had joined, and they joined under like Jane Doe and Jane Roe because they don't want to feel this backlash at their own schools. They're still employees in the district. And our attorney was smart, just the way he ran the case and included parents, and everything that he did was so perfect. It lined up just right. Having Judge Roger Benitez assigned to us, that was the hand of God. Having Paul Jonah was the hand of God. He is the most amazing attorney.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'd be where we are without him. He is a winner. He is awesome. And you just have to stand up for what's right. And I know it's hard if you're risking your career. And it did make it easier with being at the end of our career. And I would have done it again, but I had no idea I was signing up for something that was going to be, here's 4 years later and we're still doing it. And it's going to be a couple more years. Who knows? I had no idea I was signing up for a multi-year situation, but I know it's the right thing to do. We did the right thing.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. All right, so we'll kind of wrap it up on that right there. So I'll just kind of do a little conclusion here. So first of all, I always want to say thank you to all of you for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's not easy to try to get all of us on a call, and I know we also tried to get Paul Jonah on at the same time. But hopefully we'll be able to do a part two of this later because I know that it's still in court, I think, at the Ninth Circuit. And so hopefully we can do a follow-up with Paul Jonah in a month or two or whenever that comes out. So thank you all for your time. Much appreciated. And to you personally, Mirabelli, Lori West, Elizabeth Mirabelli, I want to say thank you for preserving like freedom of speech and like fighting for just like the freedom of speech, but also the freedom to like petition your government. Because I think those are like kind of some of the most important rights that we have is that, and then when you lose those rights or you lose the ability to speak freely, when you lose the ability to petition your government, like what do you have left after that? Not a lot. And so I appreciate you guys for taking a stand, even though it cost you a lot. And so I think when something costs you something, you know it meant something. And so like I think definitely you guys are history making. And when I think of like people that made history, there's like people that are like, okay, they're proactive and like they went out there trying to make history by like, you know, breaking some type of record and accomplishing something really huge. And then there's people like you that think like they made history just by being themselves and doing the right thing. And so to me, you guys, you kind of fall into that bucket of like you made history by just standing on your principles, doing the right thing, and your names will be written in the history books for
Mhm.
that. And so I want to read something that I wrote. So this is something I wrote on my Facebook page. It was a March 3rd. And so sorry. As we
Hey,
recognize
Matt, we're
when,
crying with
sorry,
you.
man, all right, man, I need to knock this
We
off.
got you, bro.
All right, sorry. All right, so as we recognize Women's History Month, I want to highlight two women who made history yesterday, Elizabeth Mirabelli and Lori Ann West. And then I wrote a couple paragraphs about you. And then I wrote, thank you, Elizabeth Mirabelli and Lori Ann West, for standing on your convictions 3 years ago and refusing to engage in deceptive acts that violate your conscience. California needs more teachers like you. And then I wrote, if you've been following my Facebook page, you know this is an important matter to me as I've been strongly objecting to these gender secrecy policies that deceive parents. So I just want to throw that out there to let you know
Mhm.
that, and as far as I'm concerned, you guys are heroes in my book, and I appreciate you. And you know, when it comes to women's history, like you know, month, you're the only two names I recognize there. Like, and I wanted to make sure I let you guys know that you know that's how I thought about you guys. So thank you.
We want to
Uh,
have you guys on again, please, because we know
oh
there's
yeah,
updates.
2.0.
We also want to share, your guys' story continuously, so we have more join you guys
Well,
late
there's much more to come. There's a lot going
now.
on with the case and book, and there's a lot going on. So,
No,
and
we're
I have,
excited.
yeah.
And thank you, Matt, for putting this on and getting the stories out there. I think it's so important to tell people the stories and the heroes behind what's going on here in California, so people don't give up hope.
Hmm.
There's too many people doing so many good things,
Yeah.
and we just need to continuously just give God our yes and keep linking arms to fight the good fight here in California because there is more Lori West, Jessica Tapia's, and Elizabeth Mirabelli's. We just need them to see your story so they stand
Hmm.
linked arms with you guys. Thanks for leading the way and being
Yeah.
trailblazers in this fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.